Hi, I'm Meenakshi Shedde. I'm South Asia delegate to the Berlin Film Festival, and I'm very delighted to present to you Leela Varghese and Emma Hobbs, directors of Lesbian Space Princess, which had a huge opening at its world premiere at the Berlinale last night. Tell us, what was the response to you for the film? Did you expect it? And what was the starting point of the film?
Well, it was really lovely. There was such a warm crowd, and there was a lot of people that just seemed to really connect with the film, like in the Q&A, which was really lovely. And how did the film start? I mean, we were part of a lab in Adelaide in South Australia, where we're from, and it's called Film Lab New Voices, and it's to give first-time feature film directors who are normally underrepresented the chance to make a feature. So that's kind of where it all started.
Fantastic. And this was by the Adelaide Film Festival?
Yeah, so that part of the initiative is the Adelaide Film Festival, the South Australian Film Corporation, and then Screen Australia also came on board as part of the initiative as well.
Fantastic. Emma, can you tell us what the film is about for the audience that isn't lucky enough to be here?
Our film is about Syra. She's an introverted space princess who goes on an intergalactic space quest to save her bounty hunting ex-girlfriend from the straight white Malians.
So the straight white Malians is really a funny... It's very funny because literally straight and white. I mean, how did the idea, both of you have quite a lot of experience in shorts. You've directed a number of shorts, you've worked on shorts as well as production design. But animation features like beyond daring for any kind of, for a first feature. Did you think it really reckless, or did you think, okay, let's see where it goes? And what was the approach with which you started? Because usually animation is very labor intensive and usually very long journey. You've got to be really invested. So what was it that made you determined to do it?
I mean, the film is like a combination of both of our skills, and so Emma is an animator, and so that's why it ultimately was an animation. And I think, yeah, you say, was it a risk? But in some ways, like, doing something for your first feature that can grab attention, stand out, and seem daring, I think is also like, we've actually found in some ways it being an animation has helped us stand out like a lot more. But I don't think we overthought it too much. I think we just thought it's a combination of both of our skills, and it is what it is. Emma wanted to be able to make a feature, and an animated feature. I wanted to be able to make a feature. I wanted to write one. But there was a lot of back and forth about whether we should do a live action film. But the fates just played out the way it did. Our producer, Tom Phillips, from We Made a Thing, was just like, he was just 100% all in on Lesbian Space Princess. Like, he was like, I see so much potential in this idea.
So lovely. How did you convince him, or what did you pitch that really interested him and grabbed his attention?
He just liked the title. He just,
okay, big tip for those making a film next.
Basically, yeah. It's like he just, and when we pitched it to him, it was mostly just a title, but I think he just felt like, yeah, there was something in that, and Emma felt really passionately about it as well. And I was probably the one that needed the most convincing, because I was like, oh, is anyone going to like take us seriously? I don't know. It's like, yeah.
So lovely. I think one of the many things, it's not literally a coming of age, but of a slightly older coming of age, but it has a lot of psychological nuance. It's very funny, it's a comedy, but it has a lot of psychological nuance about a woman who is very needy and whose partner dumps her, and then she kind of finds herself, etc., etc. I think you had mentioned a little about also including a few points that came through therapy and stuff and insights like that. Can you tell us a little, because it was very, very interesting and very mature in its psychological observation, right?
Thank you. So when we were writing it, we wanted to portray anxiety as quite authentic and not something that is just solved overnight, which I have, you see it a lot in films. You go, oh, they're fixed, they're cured. And I mean, yeah, we wrote a lot from our experiences in therapy, and sometimes the best solution for when you're feeling anxious is just to breathe, and so that's to breathe.
Meaning breathe. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. And just that focusing on that. And so when Sarah gets overwhelmed in the kind of more psychological part of the film. The way that she gets through it is through breathing and just a lot of the nuances to how we're feeling and how anxiety manifests we infused into the script and how to deal with that. Yeah, literally my I don't know if my psychologist has seen it yet, but I want them to just so they can tell me yes, no,
You got it right.
you missed the point or you got the point.
That's funny. I think one of the really charming things, many charming things about the film, is how it's really making fun of, like in the opening sequence, Kiki's rescuing this damsel in distress and this lesbian woman rescuing a stereotype. It's making a lot of fun of stereotypes, of malians, of also of lesbians, also of straight people. And I think that was very fun. Also the ability to laugh at yourself. So, did this just kind of come spontaneously, or you thought, no, we really wanted to be funny, we wanted to be light and talk of more serious issues in a light vein? Was that also some way conscious? Not really.
I think it's sort of like one thing falls into place and then it feels the other thing. I think like we were trying to figure out who kidnaps Kiki, and it wasn't always the straight white malians. There were the other ideas about what that could be. And then when it's mostly was just because it's a fun name, and also because if we thought of the character designs and we thought that that's so much fun, it wasn't so much like we weren't going into it trying to be like we want to be incredibly political. It's just and also like we had to think about things in our life that we find interesting to comment on, and it's just our perspective. We're not trying to like demonize or victimize anyone,
not at all.
but yeah, I just think, honestly, like for me, the process is just like, it just kind of pours out of me. Like there's not a lot of overthinking, like the comedy and the script just comes out. You can answer for like how it works for you, but I wish I could say there's like a lot of there is a lot of thinking, but also it is kind of like quite at least for me, that's my process where I just kind of write it and it comes out. And I do like comedy, so like that helps as well. Like spend a lot of time seeing audiences' reactions to comedy,
So
and I
nice.
think I have like.
She's also an accomplished actress. Yeah.
Oh no! I'm not. I did TV presenting, but I'm not. I've done like a tiny bit of voice acting, but I'm not. I'm a terrible actor, actually.
But it's insightful when you're used to seeing audience reactions already and you know what they respond to.
100%. I think. Yeah, and I mean, like, it's always when comedians get the chance to mix that craft with filmmaking, I think often, like, the outcomes are, like, fun films, like,
Tell us why you specially set it in outer space. What were the things you felt you could bring to the table that you couldn't in regular reality kind of thing? Or what could you have more fun with? Because it makes it, for me, more adventurous, but maybe it was more conscious that you really thought this could add a whole new dimension.
Yeah, I mean the brilliant thing about science fiction is that you can create your own world and have a lot of fun and play. So we took the real world, right, and the dynamics, and then we flipped it. So in our universe, in our galaxy, queer women of color rule the world, and so from that, when you shift that dynamic, the characters are more kind of authentic. They can breathe and exist without being defined by being marginalized.
Yeah.
And
It's empowering.
It's empowering. We wanted the characters just to be able to breathe and exist. And with the straight white malians as well, conversely, they can relate more to like our experience, as women. Yeah.
That's nice. I wanted to ask, can you tell us a little about your background, where you were born and raised? And I'm also curious whether this, for me, coming from India and seeing this film in Berlin, it's also in a way very nice to see women of color be out there in a kind of countering the stories you see of racist incidents which are worldwide, including in Australia, including in India for sure. Was that anywhere thought for you at all, or this is just how you were anyway an artist in this space and this is just one more big project you've done? Do you see it as countering racism through these images?
I feel like there's a target on my back that I haven't chose to have on my back. Like, I think I'm just an artist though. Like, I just want to tell stories. I'm just telling my point of view. I think it's an interesting thing when people are so like they find certain people so political, and it's sort of like, no, it's not about you. Like my voice is not about you. Like my voice is just me telling a story. But I mean, I grew up in Bundaberg in Australia, which is quite a small city in Australia, kind of almost like a country town. Bundaberg beer, yeah, Bundy rum. Yeah. And so I'm like basically like a bogan. I don't know if you've ever heard the term bogan, but it's like very like country Aussie.
Yeah, boondocks types.
So I grew up in Australia, and so it's kind of a complicated question, but I think I've always just kind of been, there is this sense of like, I think in Australia racism is quite subtle, so you never truly know if it's happening, but I think you just have to block it out, because at the end of the day, it's like I said, I think no matter what, you're walking around with this face, with this skin color, and you just can't let people control your art.
Sure.
But out of fear. I'm not going to let them control art out of fear. I'm just going to tell stories I want to tell.
That's why for me this is precious, because you're so it was never a conscious thing. You're just an artist doing your thing. It's not a way to counter images, not like that, right?
I mean, it's just like a celebration of representation.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see it as some sort of like it's not about countering. It's just about putting representation forward. Like I said, it's not about all of the haters. It's actually not about them. It's about empowering the people that we want to feel seen, and about spreading the love. And an interesting thing about this film is that it is produced by a straight white man, a production company of straight white men. We are all so much stronger when we are together, and you can come together and just make shit happen if you want to. You can embrace coming together, and I think everyone in this world would be happier if like we all just embraced coming together. But I mean, that's never going to happen. We don't live in a world like that. But this film is a rare example of something like that.
For sure. What kind of, so the film is in the Panorama section in Berlin. What kind of future do you see that it having to find audiences at festivals? Do you feel its title already puts it in a box and makes it a safe passage at some level, and are you keen to really go beyond that as well and get a wide audience? Because in a way, it's kind of preaching to the converted with that title.
Yeah, and of course, and hopefully as well, we want to extend that to people that like animation and people that like science fiction and are kind of down to play in the queer art form, because it's universal. The themes are universal, and we hope that it's accessible. There's a lot of lesbian in jokes, but as well as like many other references as well. But yeah, I mean, we really feel like we've always felt like the home of this film is big on the festival circuit, so we'll hopefully play in as many festivals as we want, and then through that, if there's distributors in, it would be great to get a few dubs going. It'd be so fun to see how far it can go.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Tell us a little bit about the voices. Shabana Aziz, right? And there was there were also people who I can't remember the name, but they seemed of very different nationalities. Some of the key voices. For us, for me, coming from India, it's like, oh my God, like it's like you have a name like Shabana doing a voice in a title like Lesbian Space Princess is wow, wow, wow. It's kind of things we cannot imagine in India, and maybe cannot imagine in many countries of the world. Was it just a very ordinary thing for you? I know you'd collaborated earlier. Tell us why you chose her and what she brought to the film.
Well, Shabana's probably been like my biggest collaborator. Actually, I've worked with her a lot more than I've worked with Emma. Actually, we did a musical comedy band together. Actually, a musical comedy band. Yes.
What fun. What was her role in the band?
We were just together, both of us. Singing, and comedy together. Yeah. She actually didn't play an instrument, and that was kind of the joke of the band. Okay. I mean, I don't. Like I said, it's not. I guess in Australia, I don't really feel. I guess I don't overthink a lot of this stuff. Like, it was just about casting someone that I wanted to represent that was from a very similar background to me, and that's why it's been such a beautiful thing to get to grow with Shabana, and we've been able to we've kind of been able to be there for each other and lift each other up, and I think as South Asian women in Australia, our confidence was quite low as artists, and I think we've been able to like empower each other. And we've both actually, you know, it's funny, we've kind of grown at the same time to the point where we're both having quite big success at the same time separately from each other. Like Shabana is in HBO show The Pit, and is like basically living in LA now.
Oh my God,
and so super successful, like obviously is a voice in our film, but you know, you'll see the face around a lot.
So she's an actress in the film now, in the other ones.
In The Pit? Yeah. She's amazing, and also she was in an amazing Australian indie called Bird Eater as well. Just won the actor in Australia for Best Indie.
Ooh, nice.
So, you know, she's really having a moment right now. I mean, in some ways we were lucky that we could get her to do our film, and you know, she just because we know each other, she understood the tone and the story and our intentions, and I think that makes it so much easier to have authenticity. And like Emma says, this thing with the casting where like Shabana wasn't doing a caricature of an anxious person. It just felt authentic, and I think that it's amazing how hard it is for someone to perform, you know, an anxious character who feels authentic. So yeah, we just got really lucky that we snuck in her one last time, I guess, or maybe hopefully more in the future, but before she also goes everywhere, you know.
So lovely. Emma, can you tell me a little bit background to the end credits of the line about Indigenous people in Australia whom you refer to? Tell us a little more about that and why it was important for you to acknowledge this in the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in Australia, you know, we have to acknowledge the First Nations people. Australia always will be Aboriginal land, and so we produced the film on the Kaurna people's land. And so it's always
Ghana.
Yeah, well, it's pronounced it looks like Karuna, but it's pronounced Ghana.
Okay.
And yeah, it's we produced the film on their land, and you know, it's always important to acknowledge the context, because I mean, with Australian films, especially a film that empowers people of colour, you can't ignore that part of the conversation because it's a part of the Australian identity, you know.
Also, I will just say, like, you know, us getting this chance to make this film is amazing, but we need to see that opportunity happening for our First Nations filmmakers in Australia. And, you know, there's not enough of that happening, and I think there's a lot of barriers for those filmmakers, and in some ways you feel terrible to make a film when you feel like there's other voices that need that opportunity first, and so like I think it's a big problem in Australia where we need to really get behind our First Nations voices.
That's fantastic, because my impression is, because I'd worked with APSA for 10 years, the Asia Pacific Screen Awards, and I think from the little that I know, Australia and Canada are the two really at the forefront of acknowledging First Nation people. And my impression is that, say in Australia and Canada, you cannot actually make a film if you're not on the subject of Indigenous people, if you're not from the community. Like I had the impression that Martin Scorsese would never be allowed to make Killers of the Flower Moon in Australia or Canada because he's not from the community. But is that more? It's not. I mean, there are of course a few voices from Australia who are Indigenous and really been at Cannes and so on, but they're very few and far between. Is there a growing thing beyond the acknowledgement? Is there like the efforts to involve people like yourself, people of color or other marginalized groups or underrepresented groups? Do you see more Indigenous voices coming up? Or not really?
I mean, like I said, I think it's an issue. I don't think that they're getting big enough opportunities. I think they're getting small opportunities. And I think that we need to be giving them a chance like what we got. And so I think there's a little bit of an illusion of support, and I don't think it's enough. Personally, is my take on it. You know, I mean, there would be so many amazing stories and point of views to be told that we just haven't seen yet. In the feature film space, I think like they're a very, like in South Australia, I don't think we've ever had a South Australian based First Nations filmmaker direct a feature film, so we'd love to see that happen.
With government,
Yes.
Yeah, there have been a lot of indies, but it's without support from the screen institutions generally.
Oh.
And yeah, the problem is that they are kept in terms of a formalized funding level. They're kept at quite an emerging level, and it's unfortunate. They really need to lift the game and do a career acceleration, like similar to what we did, but just for First Nations voices.
Fantastic. So I was very, very, very thrilled with the response you got. Like full house, people screaming, long Q&A. Very delighted. I hope the energy continues. Wishing you good luck in your future with this film and your careers. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.